important. What I want to do today, and I have very little time to talk about the last 20 years in some ways, because I want to set the scene and point out how the building blocks for online education were already in place before COVID, but how COVID, in some sense, thrust us into the future and forced us to go online. I want to go and I divided this talk into a series of very short kind of comments, and I want to start off by the notion of so how do I change my screen? Is that it? Oh, can you see that? Hello? Can you? I'm just trying to make sure that you can see my screen.
Yes, we can.
Right?
We saw. Yeah, it was possible to see it, but I think you cannot hear it when you're when I'm gone. But yeah, we were able to see it clearly.
Okay. So I want to start back in 1999. I was invited by Bernard Schumi to become a visiting professor in Columbia University in New York, and which is an extraordinary experience. And I asked Bernard whether there's any chance of staying on a full-time appointment there, and he said not in the near future. But why don't you become a visiting professor, a nomadic professor like Greg Lynn or Manuel Delander and a few other people who'd established this thing? The idea being that if you've got a certain body of knowledge, you might as well give it in different institutions rather than just one. So I myself became a visiting professor in Dessau in 2003. I was supported by the DAD, and I discovered a number of things from going there. First of all, what became very clear is that the German government had instituted English as an international language, and that had made a huge difference. It allowed people like myself to teach outside the English-speaking world. Secondly, we discovered that cheap flights, EasyJet and so on, made it possible for a professor to fly from London to Berlin each week and back. Thirdly, what became very clear is the students who came to Dessau, and they grew to a huge number in the space of time when I was there, they were part of an educational tourism thing that was happening. People wanted to study elsewhere, and they would do it in places like Dessau or indeed in Barcelona, where I came to teach in 4 different institutions in 1 year because it was a very popular place for master programs. And finally, the other thing I've discovered at Dessau was that actually talent is everywhere. In Dessau, we attracted students from places where they couldn't afford to study elsewhere. We attracted students from places like Kosovo, from Bangladesh, from Nicaragua, from an extraordinary range of places. And I discovered that the top 2% anywhere in the world were smart, even though they couldn't afford to study in places like the Architectural Association or Harvard. The next topic I want to address is the notion of not the nomadic professor, but the nomadic program, how particularly doctoral programs could be, in a sense, nomadic. This was established, the London Consortium was established in London. It was a combination of different schools, including the Architectural Association, where I've been teaching, but also other institutions. And it recognized basically that no institution really had enough expertise to cover the range for a doctoral program. It therefore brought together all these people from different institutions, as it were, piggybacking on the back of those institutions. Interestingly also, although it was drawing upon institutions that had their own physical space, the London Consortium had no physical space. It literally was nomadic, and I can remember giving a lecture in the back room of a pub, which they rented out especially for that particular purpose. The next step was really when I set up my own program in digital design and subsequently architecture and urbanism at the European Graduate School in Saas-Fee in Switzerland, a school that was famous for having people like Derrida and very famous philosophers come and teach. And what they basically realized was that the Saas-Fee, this beautiful village up in the mountains in Switzerland, was empty during the summer months when the skiing season was not happening. So they landed there and had a 3-week, very intensive course in the mountains up in Switzerland. And that was an incredible experience. We had a dream team, I would say, of people teaching on there, some of the most extraordinary people in the world, and we were able to bring them together, all together in this Swiss mountain village for this extraordinary moment. Unfortunately, the program dissolved after 2 years when we had a new dean who wasn't very keen on computation, and he simply got rid of the program. But then it migrated. The program itself migrated to Tongji University in Shanghai, one of the leading schools of architecture in the world. And over the summer months, we literally replicated that scenario. For 3 weeks, we brought together almost the same dream team to go and teach on the program in Shanghai. Subsequent to that, I've become the director of the Doctor of Design program at Florida International University, where I teach not at USC. I left there 10 years ago. And this program was initially envisaged as a program that was going to be 70% online and 30% in person. Instead of meeting in the mountains, we're going to meet on the beach. What happened, however, is that COVID kicked in. The program was actually started in January 2020, and we were forced to be completely online. And actually, we adapted very easily, and we operate online. And we have students all over the world, in Australia, in China, in South America, in the Middle East, in Europe, and so on. And we meet online collectively, and frankly, it works incredibly well. But I also want to talk about another initiative beyond my kind of doctoral program. That is the Digital Futures Initiative, something that I was co-founder of back in 2011. And we started off from humble beginnings. We had only about 10 students in the first year, but gradually over time, it built up into being probably the most successful series of workshops, conferences, and exhibitions in the world. By 2019, we had 800 students coming to join us on this particular program, which importantly, we made completely free. The big challenge, of course, came in 2020 with COVID. And initially, we made this kind of assessment that it was going to be absolutely impossible to meet online, to meet in person. Therefore, we canceled everything. But by April 2020, by which time I was holding my final reviews for my studio, we realized that actually there are possibilities afforded by the digital realm that made other things completely possible. I had people joining me on my review from China, from Europe, from the States, from all over the world. And it seemed that rather than being an impediment, the digital realm actually opened up the sphere of opportunity into something totally extraordinary. So we decided to launch this thing, the Digital Futures World. We went global and we went online. And I think what was interesting about this was it wasn't simply a question of going online and increasing the size, but rather we began to glimpse the possibility of a different mode of operating entirely. It seemed as though we had somehow broken through the walls of the classroom and opened up the possibility of democratizing education itself. Here you can see in 2020 where all the instructors came from and where all the students came from. We had overall 12,000 applications. I think 9,000 were given places. It was the most extraordinary event. And in 2022, we then got even larger. We had 108, I think, workshops in 2022, and including workshops in 9 different languages. And that then became the model of how we developed from then. You can see here the kind of exponential increase that was going on over the years. We got bigger and bigger, and suddenly going online, we increased the size enormously, and it's got even bigger soon than that since. I want to maybe just play you a quick excerpt after the first year of the kind of thank you speech I gave to those instructors, because it's kind of at that time we weren't quite sure what we'd done, but it seemed that something new was happening. I just want to take you through that to see if to talk about how we then try to use the platform in order to try and democratize education further. So here's me talking to the instructors, thanking them for their contributions.
At least on my end, I cannot listen to it. I don't have any sound. I'm not sure if it's on your end or
Igor. I see. Okay. It is on my end. Okay. I don't know how I can share the sound on. Normally I do it on Zoom. I share it.
Yeah.
Is it play local video? What does that say? Does that?
I assume that's the one, but I also don't use this platform usually. So probably Igor or Camilla.
Let me just try that to see.
Sure.
Let me try this. Okay. Oh no, it's not. No, it's not going to allow me that. Okay. Let me cancel that.
In settings, there's but I think that's not for sharing. Probably you need to redo this the thank you speech.
Okay. Let me simply. All right. In that case, let me not. I will just simply paraphrase what I said.
Yes,
in that thing.
Perfect.
I mean, I think it's essentially. I think what we discovered then that was something potentially, and at that time we weren't even sure. We were experimenting. What could you do online? Suddenly there's this whole new domain that opened up. the possibility that we could do things in a different sort of way. And we were just simply pushing it, testing it out and pushing it to see what would happen. Anyway, as a result of that, and so I'll just skip over that speech, but as a result of that, we came up with a kind of new mission. And the idea of Digital Futures was that somehow we could use this platform to overcome all these divisions, to bring these ideas to people throughout the world, the kind of people, the students, for example, that I've been teaching at Dessau from all the poor countries in the world, from, to allow them to get access. It seemed to us that we had to transform that, and also to recognize that really education in a world that it was frankly is not equal, where vaccination is not available in certain countries, and so on and so on and so on, and education is unaffordable to certain individuals. We need to try and share ideas and try and use this platform to kind of open up education so it became a human right and not a privilege of the wealthy. And also, as a result of all that, we began to then open up further into different language channels. This, for example, in the last few months, we've opened up channels in Arabic, Farsi, Spanish, and we've got the language channel coming up in Portuguese. And you can see that in some cases, we've had 20,000 people watching our videos. And this has been enormously successful. People really appreciated it. And that is also in line with our idea of being more inclusive, not simply using English, but actually opening up to other people in different sort of languages. The next step, and it was to try and think about how could you use this platform also as a way of transforming doctoral education. We'd already seen that you could use these kind of nomadic programs to bring together academics, the dream team of academics from across the world, to come and teach in places like Saspei or in Shanghai. What if you were to use this platform and to try and bring the best academics online? In other words, at the moment, the problem of doctoral education is you get a few individuals being taught by one professor who doesn't really know that much of more than a particular subject in one particular classroom. What if you were to take a global platform and bring together a dream team of the best professors on the world, so everybody had access to that particular thing? This was just one of a series of these things that we've been launching. This one is on AI, neuroscience, and architecture, and it's currently running. And we're literally getting some of the best thinkers in the world and bringing them together and making them available to everyone throughout the world. And in some cases, we're getting 5,500 views. The numbers are quite extraordinary. I want to then just mention briefly, I'm going to be short on that. I thought it was good because I can't play this other video, but just mention how we've been speculating about the future of education on this program. And just to say, this is what can happen. We bring together people from all over the world. In this picture here, there is someone from Kuala Lumpur, Xishan from Shanghai, Sarita from India, Antonio from Denmark, Sina Mustafi from Delft, Areti from Yak, myself in California, Nadia Tarani in New York, Amit Assad in Egypt, and so on. We have this platform where literally everyone can come together, and some of the debates we've been having have been incredibly intense. It's like some kind of global brain. You literally bring everyone together and you have this astonishing discussion. But this particular session was about the future of education. We'd had already some discussions during the Digital Futures Festival about this, and we invited Sanjay Sama from MIT to talk about these things. Now, you're not going to be able to, you're not going to be able to hear these things, but let me skip this video. But I just want to say that what Areti and Markopoulou from Yak was speculating was how we could really transform the notion of what the educator was, less the notion of the content provider, as though the professor was the person with all the knowledge, and rather the notion of somehow that the professor became a kind of curiosity stimulator, not someone who was trying to convey all the knowledge in their head to another person, but rather to recognize that maybe there are other kind of places where we could find knowledge. In the response to the comment that Reti made, which I can't show you because you can't hear the sound on it, Sanjay Sama said, yes, well, to be honest, if I were to point to where the best knowledge is available, it is already on YouTube. It's not as though any of us necessarily has the advantage of knowing all these things. We need to maybe learn from YouTube. And so this is just an example of what I'm doing right now at Florida International University. I'm teaching in 3 different institutions. I'm completely online. I'm based in California, but I'm teaching people all over the world, and this is how we're doing it. I mean, first of all, this is one particular week. I've been asked to give what they call sort of 5 to 15-minute TED Talk-like things, and I call them capsules, whereby I record these things, and they're canned, as it were, they're delivered in advance. The advantage of doing them in short stages, not only is that the attention span of most students fairly short, and therefore it's been shown that the TED Talk format actually works quite well, but it also allows me to maybe update these from year to year and not necessarily do without having to change the entire lecture. So these, I am assuming, are going to last for 3 or 4 years without having to update them. But if I do need to update one of them, I can do it without affecting the rest. Now, importantly, also, I would point out that I'm incorporating TED Talks into this discourse. It seems to me, why not? Because this is this in particular comment on how computers are using producing images. Blaise Agüeri-Arcos is probably one of the leading people in the world to talk about these things, and why not bring the best people into the thing? I also have assigned certain suggested further reading videos that refer also to some of the material on digital futures. What then we're getting towards is a new sort of domain in which we're trying to shifting the idea of the professor as being someone who has all the knowledge, is delivering all things, rather to being someone who's kind of pointing out where the knowledge is and how it can be accessed, with a view to being a kind of someone who's kind of accompanying the student on a journey, not someone who's telling them what to do, but rather who is in a sense learning with them. So this is just the kind of, this seems to me the kind of way in which things are happening. And I guess what I've been trying to point out today is that essentially that we are in the process of maybe I can unshare my screen, a process of evolving a new model of education whereby we can extend these things elsewhere and allow other people to partake and enjoy these educational ideas. I'm sorry that I lost my 2 videos that were kind of central to the whole thing.